At 28 years old, I discovered that I had a price in my marriage. To be precise, it was $473,000. This wasn't money I had saved. It was the time I had spent over 3 years, waking up 40 minutes early every day, swallowing it alone in the bathroom. Every second was the part of me that my husband and his mother deemed only natural. 3 years of marriage. A 2-bedroom apartment. A bedroom door that always jammed when locked from the inside. And a mother-in-law who never knocked. On the first day I moved into this apartment, I tried that bedroom door. The key turned twice and got stuck on the second turn. The doorknob was loose, and the latch only popped out halfway. I pushed hard, but the door didn't budge. It wasn't locked, it was stuck. "The door's like that," Julian said as he dragged the suitcase into the living room without looking up. "My mom said the landlord replaced it during renovations a few years ago, but didn't redo the lock core properly. It'll have to do. It'll have to do." Those 3 words are going to be the epitaph of my marriage. I stood in front of the door, my hand still on the handle, staring at the half-extended bolt. It quivered slightly in the air, like a hesitant gesture. "My name is Samantha. Before I got married, I was a copywriter at an advertising agency. Julian was a friend of a friend, we met through a blind date. He spoke in a low voice, walked at a leisurely pace, and always remembered to pull out the chair for me on dates. My father called him steady, and my mother said he had good prospects. The conditions were indeed good. He was a sales manager at a medical device company, with an income so stable it was almost boring. He proposed 7 months after we started dating, and we got the marriage certificate in the 9th month. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, not even many moments of racing hearts. I thought mature love was supposed to be like this. Calm. Predictable. No need to lock the door. 3 months into the marriage, my mother-in-law came to check on us for the first time. She lived in another city 300 kilometers away, took an early morning high-speed train over, and walked through the door carrying 2 bags of groceries, already wearing her own slippers. "I'll only stay for 2 days," she said, putting the vegetables into the fridge and opening every cabinet door to inspect. "You need to reorganize this kitchen. Julian doesn't like ginger, you should keep a separate knife for cutting his vegetables." I stood at the kitchen doorway. Before I could say a word, she had already swept the ginger slices from the cutting board into the trash. Those were the ginger strips I had spent 15 minutes slicing that morning. Julian had a cold. I had looked up a recipe and planned to cook ginger congee. "Mom, Samantha is making congee," Julian said as he walked out of the bedroom, his voice hoarse. "Can congee cure a cold?" Mother-in-law said without even looking up. "I'll go buy medicine. You drink plenty of water. Don't eat ginger, you've never liked it." I didn't say anything. I washed the cutting board, poured the congee into another pot, and put it in the fridge. That bowl of congee sat in the fridge for a week, and in the end, I was the one who threw it away. Julian never asked about it. That was the first time I realized that in this house, some things could disappear without anyone noticing. My mother-in-law's 2-day stay stretched into 5 days. On the evening of the 5th day, Julian and I had our first real fight in the bedroom. "Your mom used my cosmetics," I said. "That jar of face cream I bought last month, yesterday I found a third of it gone. She probably just tried a little. Sample sizes are for trying. Who tries a whole jar of face cream and uses up a third of it?" He turned over, his back to me. "She's my mom." 4 words. That was his entire defense. I stared at the back of his head, watching his breathing grow heavy within 3 minutes as he fell asleep. The door was left open. He had said, "No need to close the bedroom door, let the air flow." From that day on, I began to notice things I had overlooked before. The frequency of my mother-in-law's visits. The time she gave notice each time. No, she never gave notice. She would call and say, "I'll come tomorrow," or "I'm already on my way." Julian's response on the phone was always the same, "Okay, take care on the road." He never said, "Let me discuss it with Samantha." Our kitchen, she rules. Our washing machine, she decides when to run. Our wardrobe, she helps organize. I later learned to check my underwear drawer first thing when I got home from work, because she thought buying too expensive brands was a waste of money, and would put them away for me, tucking them into the bags she brought home. I mentioned it to Julian 3 times. The first time, he said, "That's just how she is. Don't take it to heart." The second time, he said, "Why do you keep harping on these little things?" The third time, he was silent for 30 seconds before saying 6 words, "You're overthinking it." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and did the math. Not about money, about time. If my mother-in-law comes every 2 months, stays 5 days each time, and is present from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, she occupies 15 hours of my day. 5 days add up to 75 hours. 6 times a year, 450 hours. 450 hours. Divided by 24, that's nearly 19 days. For 19 days each year, my home is not my home. And Julian? He has 365 days a year where his home is always his home. You're overthinking it. I did overthink. I started keeping a record. A gray notebook hidden deep in the wardrobe, its cover blank. The first page bore the date 6 months into the marriage. What I wrote down wasn't hatred, it was time. March 12th, mother-in-law came. She rearranged the kitchen spice rack to her liking. It took me 40 minutes to find the light and dark soy sauce again. Julian said, "You'll get used to it." May 8th, mother-in-law went through my desk drawer. She asked me why I bought that kind of book. It was a collection of feminist essays. I said, I wanted to read it. She said, "A married woman reading this tends to get restless." Julian was eating beside me, not lifting his head. On July 15th, my mother-in-law said we should have a child. "You're not getting any younger, and the elders at home are hoping for it." I said I wanted to work for another 2 years. She said, "You can work anytime, but having a child should be done early." Julian said, "Mom has a point." I circled those last 4 words 3 times in red. That wasn't his opinion. That was him taking sides. Has a point. Not "I agree," not "I think so too," but "she has a point." He removed himself from the equation, placing the point on the same side as her, while I stood on the other. In a home where there's no need to lock the door, there is no other side. I continue to write. In October, my mother-in-law retired. "I can come and stay often from now on," she said. Julian said, "Sure." He didn't ask me. In November, she turned the guest room into her private room, changing the sheets and curtains. "You guys don't need this room anyway." Julian helped her hang the hooks. I stood in the doorway. That night, I closed the bedroom door, the one that sticks. I turned the key hard twice, and the latch popped out halfway. The door closed, but it wasn't locked. It could be pushed open from the outside with ease. Just like every boundary in this house. Julian knocked from outside. "Why lock it? I'm not a stranger." I opened the door. That night I lay in the darkness, listening to his breathing. He fell asleep again within 3 minutes. And I was thinking about a question: if one day I needed to escape from behind this door, how much time would I need? I wrote the answer in my notebook: the latch sticks, requiring 2 pushes to open. Every time I open the door from the inside, it takes at least 2 extra seconds. What I didn't write was, those 2 seconds are enough for someone to say to me, "You're overthinking it." The phone call that changed everything came on a Thursday afternoon. I had taken half a day off that day, planning to go look at a new housing development. It wasn't about buying a house. Julian's and my savings plus his, had been sitting in our joint account. That sum, $673,200, was money I had been saving since my first year of work. I started working 2 years before Julian did, and during those 2 years, I lived in a shared apartment, brought lunch to work, and deposited 40% of my monthly salary into that account. Julian's money later went into the same account. He earned more and saved more. But I never cared about the proportions. I thought that was what marriage meant, no distinction between yours and mine. We planned to save up $800,000 by the end of the year for the down payment on a small 2-bedroom apartment. Julian had his eye on a new development east of the city, 92 square meters, south-facing, with a bay window in the master bedroom. It wasn't the apartment I was after. It was that door. A new development, a new door lock. One key, only he and I would have. A place without a mother-in-law's exclusive room. A place where I wouldn't have to keep accounts late into the night. That afternoon at 2, I sat in the sales office, and the agent calculated the down payment and monthly installment for me. I said I'd go back and discuss it with my husband. As I walked out of the sales office, the sunlight was beautiful. I stood by the roadside for a moment and opened my mobile banking app to check my balance. $673,200. Saved for 3 years, not a cent less. I was wrong. The balance showed $1,400. I thought I'd misread it. I logged out and logged back in. $1,400. My hand started trembling. I dialed Julian's number. The first call went unanswered. The second rang 6 times before he picked up. Julian, where's the money in the account? There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Samantha, my mom's in the hospital. I asked you where the money is. It was a heart attack. He was rushed to the ER last night. My brother can't handle it alone back home, so I transferred $450,000 first for hospitalization fees and surgery deposit. $450,000? She doesn't have medical insurance. Everything is out of pocket. You didn't discuss this with me. Time is of the essence. Julian, that's our house fund. He fell silent again. This time, not for 2 seconds, but 5. The house can wait. My mom can't. The house can wait. I've heard words like that before. Not from him. From another voice, in another context. But in that moment, when the words left his mouth, they struck me. What about the rest of the money? Shouldn't there be $670,000 in the account? Besides the surgery fees, I transferred a sum to my brother's account. The family needs renovations. Mom's always wanted to fix up the old house, so I figured we'd take care of it this time. There's less than $200,000 left, enough for daily expenses. $450,000 for the surgery. Plus renovations. Plus daily expenses. 673,200 yuan had shrunk to under 200,000. I asked about each sum, and he answered about each sum over the phone. 450,000 had been transferred to the City People's Hospital's corporate account. 120,000 had been sent to his younger brother Connor's personal card. 80,000 was set aside for subsequent rehabilitation and medication costs. And there was 1,400 yuan left. Why didn't you tell me? My voice trembled, but I tried to keep it steady. I called you, but you didn't answer. You were in a meeting. You can send a message. You can wait for me to call back. Samantha, his voice suddenly dropped, carrying a tone I knew all too well, the most dangerous tone in a marriage, not anger, but impatience. Are you keeping score with me? That sentence slammed a lid on the entire conversation. Keeping score. He said I was keeping score. What I was keeping was never a score. It was a calculation. If my opinion was never sought, if my assets were transferred in my absence, if ours was really just his, then what exactly was my relationship to this home? I didn't say anything more. I hung up the phone. Standing at the entrance of the sales office, the sunlight was still bright. Across the street, people were queuing in front of a milk tea shop. A little girl in a school uniform was tugging at her mother's hand, acting spoiled. I didn't cry. I opened the notes app on my phone and started writing. March 21st, 2:17 p.m. Account balance, 1,400 yuan. Julian transferred 450,000 yuan without my consent for his mother-in-law's surgery, and another 120,000 yuan to Connor's personal account. He said, "The house can wait." Then I made a second call. I called the bank's customer service. "Hello, I'd like to check the transfer records of the joint account under my name. I need to know the authorization method for every transaction exceeding 10,000 yuan." The customer service representative said I needed to provide account information and identity verification. I sat down on the steps of the sales office, placed my bag on my lap, and took out my ID card. 10 minutes later, the customer service representative told me, large transfers require authorization from both parties. However, the account's opening agreement includes a supplementary clause, an option to select a single-party authorization mode at the time of account opening, allowing either party to independently operate the funds in the account without confirmation from the other. I asked who selected this mode. After checking, the customer service representative said, it was chosen at the time of account opening, 3 years and 2 months ago. 3 years ago. That was when Julian and I had just gotten married and opened this account together. When I was filling out the form, Julian said, "Just check, agree on everything, keep it simple." I didn't read the fine print. I hung up the phone. Sitting on the steps, the phone screen was blinding in the sunlight. I squinted, read through all the numbers again. Then I made a decision. That decision wasn't divorce. It wasn't a fight either. Nor was it calling Julian to demand an explanation. That decision was, I need to know everything. All the transfer records. All the chat logs. In all the discussions and decisions, how many times was I left out? Because at the end of that phone call, Julian said something. He said, "My mom's surgery fees, if I, as her son, don't pay, who will?" He didn't say we. He said I. But the money was ours. No. The money was never ours. It was his, when he needed to use it for what he thought was right. It was ours, when I needed to use it. No, I never needed to use it. I never touched that money. In 3 years, I didn't take a single cent. I saved. He withdrew. I saved for 3 years. He spent it in 3 days. That was the entire history of that account. I stood up, brushed the dust off my skirt, and walked back to the sales office. The saleswoman was still there. She saw me return and smiled. "Ma'am, have you made a decision?" "That property," I said, "the 92 square meter one facing south, when's the earliest I can take possession?" "Next June. If you want a ready unit, you'll have to wait for phase 2, March the year after." "Could I take a look at the door in the showroom?" The salesperson was taken aback. "The door?" she asked. "The bedroom door. I want to see the lock." She probably thought I was strange, but she still took me to the showroom. I stood in front of that door and turned the handle 3 times. Each time, the latch clicked out cleanly. No sticking, no hesitation. I reached for the handle and pulled the door shut from the inside. Click. The latch slid into the frame. A perfect fit. When this door is closed from the inside, no one outside can push it open. Unless the person inside chooses to open it. I stood in front of that door for about 10 seconds. Then I turned around and said 6 words to the salesperson, "I'll think it over." As I walked out of the sales office, I added a line to my phone's memo, "Next June." By then, I will have that key in my hand. I'm a copywriter. My job is to organize information, tell stories, and persuade people with logic. The only thing 3 years of marriage taught me is to separate emotions from facts. To turn "he hurt me" into "he did a certain thing on a certain date, leading to a certain outcome." That night, I came home and Julian wasn't there. He hadn't called to say where he'd gone. I opened the closet, pulled out that gray notebook, and copied down the transfer amounts I'd recorded that afternoon. Then I opened my computer. The first step was to export the full transaction history of our joint account. I logged into online banking and selected Export Transaction Details, setting the date range from the account opening date to today. I chose Excel format. 3 years and 2 months worth of records. Over 2,000 entries. I went through them one by one. Julian's salary deposits. My salary deposits. The scattered savings we each transferred in. Then the expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, daily necessities. And those large transfers that didn't have my signature. I marked every transaction over 10,000 yuan that lacked a dual authorization flag. In red. The red marks multiplied. It wasn't just this times 450,000 and 120,000. 3 years ago, just 2 months after we got married, a transfer of 80,000 yuan went to an unknown account. The note read loan advance. I asked Julian, and he said it was a loan for his younger brother's car down payment. He'll pay it back soon. How soon is soon? I scrolled further, but there was no repayment record. A year ago, 36,000. The note said household expenses, transferred to my mother-in-law's account. Half a year ago, 20,000. Transferred to my mother-in-law. 3 months ago, 15,000. Transferred to my mother-in-law. I sorted these transfers by date and drew up a table. First column, date. Second column, amount. Third column, payee. Fourth column, notes. Fifth column, did Julian inform me? In the fifth column, only 2 rows read yes. 14 rows read no. 14 transfers, totaling over 300,000. Within that 300,000, there were loans to my brother, household expenses for my mother-in-law, and holiday allowances for the hometown. Not a single one had I agreed to. Not a single one had I known about before the transfer. I closed my laptop. It was 1:20 a.m. Julian still hadn't come home. I sent him a message, "Where are you?" At 2 in the morning, he replied, "Hospital. Mom's awake." I typed 3 words, "Got it." Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, I took half a day off. I went to the bank and transferred the remaining balance in the joint account, that $1,400, into another account under my own name. This account I had opened before marriage and never told Julian about. Then I went to a law firm. Not someone I knew. I searched online, sorted by rating, and picked the second one. The first one's reviews were too perfect, as if they were fake. The law firm was in an old office building on the west side of town, the elevator creaking and groaning. The lawyer, Vivian, was in her early 40s, wearing a gray suit, with a pot of nearly dead potholes on her desk. I placed the printed Excel spreadsheets and transfer records in front of her. She looked at them for 10 minutes without saying a word. Then she looked up. "What outcome are you hoping for?" "I want to get that money back. At least the part one deposited. During the marriage, if one spouse disposes of joint property without the other's consent, the other can seek to have it revoked. But there are a few issues," she said, flipping through the forms. First, the remarks on these transfers are all very cleverly written. Advance payment, household expenses, holiday allowance. Legally, it's hard to prove these aren't normal family expenditures. Is a holiday allowance of over 30,000 yuan normal? Not normal. But the defendant could argue it's a special family circumstance. Second, your husband paying for his mother's surgery could, in judicial practice, be considered fulfilling filial obligations, and the court may not necessarily support a full recovery. Then what can I recover? Let me calculate it for you. She listed out a breakdown on paper. Your total salary deposited, minus the household expenses you clearly knew about and agreed to, minus reasonable living costs. This number is the portion you can theoretically claim. She pressed the calculator for 10 minutes. About 410,000 or so. 410,000, less than what I had saved. But far more than 1,400. I need you to do something for me, I said. Draft a lawyer's letter. Not to send now, but to wait for my notice. You still need to gather more evidence? Yes. I returned to the office and started my normal work. Copywriting, meetings, revisions, final review. Everything as usual. After work, I began another task. I dug out Julian's old phone. After he got a new one, he had tossed the old one in a drawer. I charged it up, and surprisingly, it still turned on. No lock screen password. All his passwords were the same, his birthday. I spent the entire night scrolling through his WeChat chat history. Conversations between him and my mother-in-law. Between him and his younger brother. And some contacts whose names I didn't even know. I screenshotted each message one by one, sent them to my phone via Bluetooth, and then deleted the transfer records. There wasn't much crucial information. But a few lines were enough. A voice message from Connor, which I converted to text. Bro, Mom said don't tell sis-in-law too many details about the money. Wait until she asks. Anyway, the money's in our family's account, she can't do anything about it. Julian's reply was a single word, And there was a message from my mother-in-law, don't tell your wife too much about Connor buying a car. She's an outsider, she has no say in our family's affairs. Outsider. That word had been used for 3 years, but only today did I notice it. Not an outsider in the legal sense. An outsider in the emotional sense. Her son's wife, in her eyes, was an outsider. And her son responded with a single "Hom." I saved those screenshots into an encrypted folder. The folder's name was Outsider. Then I started another task, searching for the account opening documents for the joint account. I searched through every folder, drawer, and cabinet in the house. Finally, I found it in the bottom drawer of Julian's desk, a craft paper envelope containing all the account opening documents, including that agreement I had never really read, the one he told me to just check agree on everything. I flipped to the last page and looked at the signature line. My signature. He had handed me the pen at the time, pointed at the blank space, and said, sign here. His signature. Right next to it. I ran my fingers over the paper. In the authorization method column, there was a box. The box had a check mark. It was checked for unilateral authorization mode. The ink color of that check mark matched the ink color of his signature. It was different from the ink color of mine. I took a pen of the same color and tried a few strokes on another sheet of paper. The thickness of the nib and the degree of ink penetration were exactly the same as the handwriting in his signature. What does this mean? It means that checkmark next to the key clause wasn't made by me. It was him. I took a photo. Zoomed in on the details of that checkmark. Saved it into a folder. At this point, I already had enough in my hands. 6 years of salary records. 3 years of joint account statements. 14 unauthorized transfers made without my consent. Chat screenshots. Handwriting comparisons on the account opening agreement. And a truth that was being forced upon me. Julian had known from the very beginning that this account was designed so he could use every penny in it without needing my consent. And from the very beginning meant the first day of our marriage, or even earlier. I sat at my desk at 2 in the morning. Julian hadn't come home tonight again, said he was staying overnight at the hospital. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our WeChat chat history. Over the past month, our conversations had grown fewer and fewer. He'd send "not coming back tonight," and I'd reply okay. He'd send "mom's doing better," and I'd reply that's good. He'd send "have you eaten?" and I'd reply yes. Steady as ever. As if nothing had happened. He doesn't know that I know. He doesn't know that I have a folder in my hands, titled Outsider. He doesn't know that there's only $1,400 left in that account, and that I've been depositing money into it, from my salary card, $5,000 every month, into a new account he can't see. He doesn't know what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the right moment. That moment isn't when I confront him to argue. It isn't when I throw the evidence in his face. It isn't when I file a lawsuit in court. That moment is the day his mother is discharged from the hospital. Because on that day, he will come back. He will think that everything is over. He will sit down, drink a glass of water, and ask me, "Samantha, how have you been at home alone these past few days?" And then I will say, "Not so good." Then I'll open that folder. Before he even says his next sentence. March 28th. Mother-in-law discharged from the hospital. Julian sends a message at 3 in the afternoon, "Mom's out. Connor's taking her back to the old place. I'll be home tonight." I reply with one word, "Okay." From the moment I received the message to the sound of his key turning in the lock, 4 hours and 17 minutes had passed. I sat on the sofa in the living room, with a folding table in front of me. On the table was something, a manila envelope. Inside the envelope was not evidence. The evidence was in the drawer. Inside the envelope was a key, a spare key to our apartment that I had duplicated online. Julian didn't know I had this key made. He thought the one in his hand was the only one. When I did this, my hands were steady. Over these 3 years, I had done too many things he didn't think I needed to do. Making a spare key was nothing. The sound of the lock turning. The door opened. Julian walked in, carrying a plastic bag. On his face was a look of relief, like a diver surfacing for their first breath. "Samantha, Mom's out of the hospital. The surgery was a success." He set the bag down at the entrance, changed his shoes, and said, "I brought you some of Mom's braised pork." He walked into the living room and saw me sitting on the sofa, with a folding table and envelopes in front of me. "What's this?" "Sit down." He shot me a glance. It wasn't confusion, but that look of what's wrong now that he had grown accustomed to. "I'll stand for a bit. I've been sitting in the car all day." I said, "Sit down." He was stunned. I had never used this tone. Not anger, not pleading, a command. He sat down. At the other end of the sofa, about a meter away from me. "Julian, I'm going to ask you a few questions. You only need to answer yes or no." "Samantha." The first question, the $673,200 in the joint account, "Tell me now how much is left." The corner of his mouth twitched. I'd seen that expression countless times. It was him organizing the most reasonable answer in his mind before replying. "Less than 200,000. The exact figure. Just answer yes or no." "No." "How much is left?" Silence. 1,400. I said nothing. It wasn't that I didn't know the number. I needed him to say it out loud. Second question, "Did you ask me before making any of those transfers, the 450,000 for the surgery and the 120,000 for your brother?" The situation was urgent. "Yes or no?" A long silence. "No." Third question, "Did you know that the single authorization mode meant you could use the money in the account without my consent?" When opening the account. "Yes or no?" Yes. Fourth question, "Did you check that box, or did I?" He finally looked up at me. "Samantha, what do you mean?" Answer. "We handled it together back then, Yes. Or. No." He gritted his teeth, the muscles in his jaw bulging. "Yes." "Which yes?" "The one you ticked, or the one I ticked?" "The one I ticked." The living room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I took the folder out of the drawer and set it beside the envelope. "This is a record of every sum of money you transferred without my consent over the past 3 years. This is a screenshot of your conversations with your brother and your mother. And this is a handwriting comparison of the checkmark on the account opening agreement." I opened the folder and flipped through the pages one by one for him to see. He said nothing. "Julian, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to argue, I'm not going to ask you why. I just need you to answer one last question. I looked at him. He looked at the evidence on the table. Did you know I was saving up to buy a house? Yes. You know that money includes my salary from 6 years of work, not just yours, right? I know. Do you know I never touched that money? Silence. I know. Do you know that from start to finish, all I've ever wanted was a key that I could call my own? His eyes were red. Not from guilt. It was the look of a cornered beast searching for an escape. Samantha, his voice dropped low. My mother's surgery, I couldn't just not do it. My brother's situation, I couldn't just ignore it. You want me to pay the money back, I never said I wouldn't. How will you pay it back? You're broke, Julian. After your monthly salary pays off the credit card and car loan, how much is left? And your savings? Your savings either went to your mom's surgery or are sitting in your brother's account. How are you going to pay it back? I can pay in installments. How many installments? 3 years? 5 years? And during those 3 years? Do we keep living in this apartment with a door that won't even lock? Do we keep letting your mom come and stay whenever she wants? Do we keep letting her rummage through my drawers? Are you digging up old grudges? Old grudges? A transfer from 3 days ago is an old grudge? He stood up. Samantha, what exactly do you want? I stood up too. I want every single cent you transferred out of my account returned. Not our money. My money. The money I saved before marriage, after marriage, the money on my paychecks with my name clearly written on them. That's marital property. According to marriage law, if one spouse disposes of joint property without the other's knowledge, the other spouse has the right to reclaim it. He froze. I had cited the law. He wasn't used to this version of me. You consulted a lawyer? Yes. When did you? When you weren't home. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he said something I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Was it really necessary? 4 words. Not I'm sorry. Not I'll figure something out. Not I was wrong. It was it really necessary? Meaning, are you willing to destroy this family over this money? Meaning, are you willing to go this far just because I transferred your money? Meaning, your feelings, your savings, your 6 years of endurance, all of it combined doesn't even warrant a worth it. I looked into his eyes. Yes, I am. The sound of a key turning came from outside the door. The door opened. Connor stood at the entrance. Behind him was my mother-in-law. She should have been 300 kilometers away in her hometown. She should have just been discharged from the hospital and needed rest. She shouldn't have been at this door. But here she was. I had Connor drive me here, my mother-in-law said as she walked into the living room, glancing around. I heard you're making a scene. Making a scene. She called the fact that you transferred my savings without my consent a scene. Mom, you. Julian, shut up, she said without even glancing at her son, walking straight up to me. Samantha, when my son married you, our family gave an 88,000 yuan bride price. What did you bring? You brought nothing but your mouth, moving into the apartment my son bought. The rent for this apartment, Julian and I split it 50-50. So what? You're his wife. It's only natural for him to give you a place to live. Let me ask you, over these 3 years, how much have you actually taken care of in my family's affairs? Have you contributed a single cent? You never let me. If I don't say anything, you just ignore it? You're our family's daughter-in-law, some things shouldn't need me to spell them out. Her words came like a burst of bullets, without pause, without need for my reply. She wasn't having a conversation, she was delivering a verdict. My son uses the family's money to pay for my medical treatment, to buy a car for his younger brother, to renovate the house back in our hometown. That's called filial piety. You, who married into this family, what right do you have to stop him? I didn't stop him. I just asked him to tell me beforehand. Tell you? Would you have agreed if he told you? That's a different matter. If you didn't agree, would the matter be dropped? My mom's life was hanging by a thread, and you expect us to wait for your signature? Julian finally spoke. But what he said was, "Mom, don't get worked up, you just got out of the hospital." Not, "Mom, she has the right to know." Not, "Mom, this is my fault." It was, "Don't get worked up." He was protecting her blood pressure. Not me. My mother-in-law looked at me, a victorious smile curling at the corners of her mouth. I had seen that smile too many times, in other people's stories, in online posts, in those rants about my mother-in-law did this or that. But now it stood before me, no longer someone else's story. "Samantha, either you accept this family or you leave." I turned to Julian. "Is that what you mean too, or just your mother?" He looked at me. Then glanced at his mother. "Samantha, calm down first." "I am calm. I'm asking you, is this what you want?" Silence. Connor hadn't said a word since he walked in. He stood by the door, hands in his pockets, as if waiting for an outcome that had nothing to do with him. Julian remained silent. His mother answered for him, "He's my son. What I say goes for him too." I nodded. I gathered the envelope and folder from the table and put them back in the drawer. Then I walked into the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase I had already packed. Julian's eyes finally shifted. "You. I tidied up while you were away." "Where are you going?" "To my own place." "You don't have a place." "I found a short-term rental. 1 month's deposit, 3 months rent up front. With my own money." I pulled my suitcase to the entrance, crouched down, and changed my shoes. My mother-in-law stood there, blocking the door. "Samantha, if you walk out that door today, don't ever think about coming back." I looked up at her. "I don't need to come back." I pulled the spare key from my pocket and held it up in front of her and Julian. "This key, I had it copied. Your door, I made a duplicate of it." I placed the keys on the shoe cabinet in the entryway. "I'm returning them to you now." I pulled open the unlocked door and stepped outside. The hallway lights were motion activated. The moment I walked out, the lights went off. In the pitch black, I heard Julian's voice from behind me. "Samantha." I didn't turn around. "If you leave, don't come back regretting it." I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I took out my phone from my bag and sent a message to Lawyer Vivian. "You can send the letter now." The elevator reached the first floor. The doors opened. I walked out of the apartment building, and the night breeze was cool. Dragging my suitcase, I passed the street lamp at the entrance of the residential complex. The light stretched my shadow long. I stopped and stood by the roadside for a few seconds. I took out my phone, opened the Notes app, and wrote down the final entry, March 28, 9:47 p.m. I walked out of that door. I didn't lock it. Because that door had never truly been locked. Lawyer Vivian's legal letter was sent out 3 days later. The night Julian received the letter, he called me. I didn't answer. He sent a message, a long one. The gist of it was, he never expected things to escalate like this. He was willing to pay back the money, but he needed time. He asked if I could talk about it at home. He said his mother's words were a bit much, but he was stuck in the middle too. I finished reading it. I didn't reply. Lawyer Vivian negotiated with Julian on my behalf. His lawyer was a commercial attorney from the law firm Julian's company worked with, not well versed in family cases. After several rounds of back and forth, the proposal they put forward was, acknowledge the $370,000 as recoverable funds, to be repaid over 18 months at $20,000 per month. Lawyer Vivian said we could continue to fight it, but the litigation process would be lengthy, and the legal fees wouldn't be cheap. I chose to accept it. Not because I couldn't wait 18 months. But because I knew that $370,000 wasn't the final number. The final verdict lay in his mother's and his brother's hearts, in every ahm he said to his mother, in every silence that followed when I was told you're overthinking it. Some debts can't be repaid with money. Some debts remain unsettled even after the money is paid. The divorce proceedings between Julian and me took 4 months. The first time we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau, he didn't show up. The second time, he came but backed out at the last moment. The third time, he finally signed. In total, we exchanged fewer than 20 words throughout the entire process. When he transferred the first installment to my new account, he attached a message, "I'm sorry." I stared at those 3 words, and typed back 3 words, "Got it." Not "it's okay." Got it. I received your apology. But I don't accept it. I don't know if that counts as forgiveness. I only know that some people's sorry isn't an apology, it's settling a bill. A few words of regret, and they assume the matter is closed. I'm not a cashier. I moved into that short-term rental. 14 square meters, facing north, with a wall right outside the window. No bay window, no south-facing balcony, no hardwood floors. But there was a door. A door with a lock that you could twist from the inside. When the bolt clicked into place, it made a sound, a crisp clack. Every day before leaving, I would turn that lock once. To make sure it was secured. To make sure no one from outside could get in. The first night I moved in, I sat on the bed, staring at the door. My phone lit up. A news notification. I swiped it away. Then I saw the recently deleted folder in my photo album. Inside was a screenshot I had taken when the joint account first hit 670,000. I had never deleted it. Not because I couldn't bear to let it go. But because I needed to remember, I once had that money. I once came close to holding a key of my own. And the one who took it away wasn't a robber, wasn't a con artist. It was the person I chose. I chose wrong. That realization cuts sharper than any betrayal. Because it placed the knife right into my own hands. You can blame others for hurting you. But you can't help blaming yourself for giving them the chance to hurt you in the first place. I deleted that screenshot. Emptied the recently deleted folder. Then I opened that gray notebook. On the last page, I wrote a line, "The sound of a lock bolt clicking shut sounds better than 670,000. In August, I moved into my newly rented apartment. Still renting. Still a bit short on the down payment. But this time, the account was under my own name. No joint ownership, no single-party authorization. Only I could open it. On moving day, I bought a new lock. Not for the door, for the bedroom drawer. A small combination lock, 3 digits. I locked that gray notebook away. The password wasn't my birthday, wasn't Julian's birthday, wasn't some anniversary. It was 673,200. What I need to remember isn't hatred. It's what that number once represented, not money, but the courage I had to believe in someone. That courage wasn't wrong. The one who misused it was. But it won't be given out carelessly again. That night, I sat on the floor of my new home, surrounded by unopened cardboard boxes. Outside the window, there were car sounds, in the distance, there were lights. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Julian's chat interface. The last message was his "I'm sorry." I typed 4 words, but didn't send them. The door was locked. Then I deleted his chat history. Not deleting him, deleting the version of myself that still hesitated. If you've ever been in a relationship and found yourself priced with a clear tag, you'd naturally understand that the most painful part isn't the price itself, but that the one who said it never thought you'd see the label. I stood up. Brushed the dust off my pants. Walked to the door. Turned the handle. Click. Locked.